and then taking on flying, all of a sudden fear found me, and I had to learn how to cope and how to deal with that and how to work through it. Welcome back to the Lucas Bros podcast. With me is Ryan Lucas and I am Chad Lucas. We are two brothers living in Southern California and just doing this podcast for fun and to enjoy each other's company and talk about life experiences and hobbies and really anything that we want to. So thanks for joining in. Today, we are going to be talking about our hobbies or different hobbies that we've had throughout the years and some of the life lessons that we've learned from them. So this was your idea for the topic, and I love it. It's such a great idea, not just talking about what we do, but what we've learned from some of the different hobbies and things.
Yeah, we've both been really blessed to be able to do a lot of fun, like what you might call extracurricular type things. But what I find so fascinating about all those things is like, if they're good things, you end up learning something about life from them. And I've benefited so much from the hobbies I've gotten to enjoy, and I think you have too. And there's always something to learn there, especially when you have like such a wide variety of things that both of us have gotten to try. So I was curious to see what you came up with and what you learned from it.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one too. This is one of those ones I think will be really fun to look back on in a couple of years and think about what's changed, or even think about as we pick up new hobbies or new things, think about what am I learning from this, or what have I learned from past hobbies that I can now apply to this new hobby. So I'm excited. What made you think of this question, by the way?
We had kind of talked about different topics and we were talking about hobbies, but I was trying to think, how could we incorporate like a little bit like an interesting spin on just talking about what we like to do. So I'm curious, like if you were to list just like bullet points, hobbies you've tried in the past. I know becoming a pilot is up there. We both have done scuba diving. What other things have you done that you would consider have been hobbies in different seasons of your life?
Yeah, so I've had times when I was super into rock climbing and rock climbing a ton. I miss those times. And motorcycle riding, getting into guns and shooting, target practice, things like that. Scuba diving, being a pilot, cold plunging, and I think that's mostly it. Yeah. What about you?
A lot of overlap. Really into climbing for a season, scuba diving, surfing is relatively new for me. Working on cars and motorcycles. Those would be probably the big ones that I could think of. Or building anything, building with my hands. I'm working on a dresser right now. So those would be a lot of the hobbies I've enjoyed. Which ones did you single out? And maybe start with one, the hobby, and then what you've learned from it.
Yeah, so I'll give you all three, and then we can start with one of them. So the hobbies that I chose to talk about what I've learned, and the hobbies where I've learned the most, would be scuba diving, becoming a pilot, and cold plunging. So dealer's choice. What do you want me to start with?
Start with the scuba diving, because that was one of mine also.
Yeah. So scuba diving has taught me couple things. One, it was one of the first complex hobbies that I learned post graduating from college. So you go from college and you are so academic and you're learning new things. Your mind is just constantly absorbing new material and you're digesting it and integrating into your life. And then you go into the workforce and you learn your new job. And it was a couple years into that then it was really something where I said, I haven't really picked something up new. I haven't been challenging my mind. And so my wife and I, we did a month of no TV, and in my boredom decided I should get into scuba diving. And one of the lessons I learned in scuba diving was just how to learn again, how to go through and learn something complex, right? Where you're learning decompression tables, you're learning about all the safety precautions and parameters, you're learning about all the different gear that you're doing. And so I really had a great time just refreshing on learning how to learn again and learning how to go deep on a topic. But then beyond that, and I'd say some of the things that have really taught me more life lessons along the way with scuba diving is, one, always trust your instrumentation. So there is a situation when I was scuba diving when my compass said I needed to go left, and I was dead sure in my gut that I needed to go right. And I went right and trusted my gut, which is what we so oftentimes hear. Trust your gut, trust your gut. And I took us into this terrible, shallow reef with these surging waves and everything. And it was a bad situation. It could have ended up a lot worse. Luckily, we got out of it, but it was a lesson. Always, always trust the instrumentation. Make sure your instrumentation is correct. You do the checks and double checks before you go out, but always trust your instruments. And especially with a pilot, that's very true as well.
Overlap with being a pilot for sure.
I'm really glad I learned that lesson on the low risk side of scuba diving before learning that lesson in a plane.
Yeah. And that's a good point to be thankful for. Both of us have, again, had the tremendous privilege of being able to try a lot of very privileged hobbies, but also we're both still alive.
Yes.
Which says a lot after, riding motorcycles or flying a plane or scuba diving, any of that stuff. I think what's cool about a lot of those things is they teach you some gratitude too, of like, man, that you're really thankful for your life when you're pushing the boundaries a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think that leans into the second lesson from scuba diving that was really important for me, which is calmness under pressure and calmness under chaos too. You've been in those situations where the waves are surging, you're getting tossed to and fro, literally. You're maybe banging into corally rocks that could scrape you or really cut you up pretty bad. And again, the idea is to try to avoid getting into those situations. But I remember another time I was out and I was, one of my friends was leading us. So I was following him and we got into a really, again, similar type of cove, sort of shallow, surgy area. And it was very difficult. And he basically sort of lost his nerve in that situation. And I'd been in a situation like that before when I'd gotten us lost with a compass, but knew how to react. And he basically kind of looked at me. I could see the bewilderment in his eyes of just, I don't have this anymore. And it was a great lesson because I'd been in that situation before and understood how to just stay calm under that pressure, that if I lose my nerve, if I freak out in this situation, it's only going to get worse. And I'm probably going to start swimming in circles, or I'm going to start breathing really hard. I'm going to run out of my air much quicker. And so he basically just kind of tapped me of like, you got to lead this now. And I remember just slowly, again, looking at the compass, we got to go this way, looking at that, and then just kicking. And it was basically the Finding Nemo expression of just keep swimming, just keep swimming. And even when I didn't feel like we were making any progress, it felt like we were standing in the same spot. You're looking there and you feel like you're literally moving an inch at a time with the surge. And yet I knew just keep swimming, just keep going. And eventually we got out of that area. But it was that calmness, the calm, controlled breathing, and just in the midst of all that chaos, staying calm under pressure. So I've had the fortunate opportunity through scuba diving to learn how to do that and to actually act that out in some hairy situations, because there it can be really dangerous if you lose your nerve, you popped up too fast, or a lot of times people want to pull that the parachute of scuba diving and just go up for air, and then they get the bends and things like that. So and that's played out a lot of with motorcycle riding, other things, just the calmness under pressure and chaos.
I think that basically umbrella covers every high adrenaline hobby ever, of is calmness under pressure, take a deep breath. That's definitely what I learned from scuba diving. That was my main takeaway, was hey, just slow down, be calm, enjoy. But I was just at a supermoto motorcycle track day, and one of the first things the guy said is, just remember to breathe while you're riding, and remember to take nice, slow, deep breaths. And the funny part of it too is he was like, no motorcycle crash has ever happened after you took a nice, slow, deep breath. It's just never happened in the history of any crash. And a couple of people actually crashed on the track, not seriously, but the first thing that he said when they came back, he goes, "So you crashed your bike?" "Yeah." "Did you take a nice, calm, deep breath before you crashed your bike?" It's "No, absolutely not. I was tense, or I was under pressure, or I, reacted or something." And that's 101 every hobby of stay cool, calm, take a deep breath.
Yeah. You have a lot more time in those situations than you think you do.
Yeah.
When the chaos is happening. And sometimes you do have to react quickly, but you always have time for that calm, deep breath.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually something I'll just really quick caveat, like for parenting or even in business, you're in a deal or in a meeting and things are going bad, or again, kids are screaming, taking that calm, deep breath and just slowing yourself and learning and having the ability to do that is game changing.
Is that something you've learned from cold plunging also?
Yeah. Let me get to that though. Let's go to your first hobby though.
Mine was scuba diving. And I think maybe to elaborate on the point, I had come to that hobby from liking to do other things that were maybe more fast paced, like mountain biking or running. And then when I got to scuba diving, it's like, no, it's all about how, slowly you can enter the water, how calmly you can breathe, make your tank last longer. You're, inherently anything you're doing with your watching animals is like patience is so required. So like you'll see more marine life if you chill out and go slow and really, pace yourself for having a nice, long, relaxed dive. And that really changed, my speed. Having learned it when I was like in my early 20s, it was like, oh, wow, this is such a different thing to do than try to go down and go as fast as you can to do everything. So that was probably my first takeaway from hobbies.
Nice. I agree with scuba diving, just that slow, peaceful patience. There's something about just being down, the quietness of the water, just that air,
Yeah.
It is relaxing.
Yeah.
You're making me want to go out and dive right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, second hobby, we can go into cold plunging.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar. And it's funny because I learned a lot of that calm, deep breath under the chaos with scuba diving, but cold plunging has just taken that to the next level. And I'd say beyond just the calm, deep breath is being able to enter into Zen mode. So I've talked to people who have done, and I think I talked about this on one of the earlier podcasts as well, but how when I first started cold plunging, I would get in and the mind is just racing. You feel you just feel like I got to jump out of this. You got the flight going on. And I've talked to a lot of other people where they've said, yeah, dude, like how I've seen these guys who are just zen in the water. And like, how do they do it? And I told them it's training. I had to do about 10 cold plunges before it was like a trigger. It's like a switch in my mind where it just happened where I was able to just lock in and get into this Zen mode. And it's almost like you think about the ruts in the road, right? When the wagon wheels would go over it and then it would create those paths and the next wagon would basically kind of lock in to that and it would just stay on that. Creating that neuro pathway of that Zen state of just that calmness, the controlled breathing, and just mental clarity while being in the cold plunge. It's now ruts in my mind that I can lock into pretty much at will. And so an example of this was there was one day after I learned this technique in cold plunging where the house was just sort of chaotic. I think Bree was vacuuming something, so the vacuum was going off. The two of the other girls started fighting. The baby started crying. And it was one of those things where just all of a sudden, and I was trying to pick something up or do something, all of a sudden, just everything got really chaotic, really fast. And it was so great because I remember just pausing, taking the deep breath, but beyond the deep breath, locking into that Zen mode, and my mind just went straight into just boom, like I'm just calm, cool, collected. And it just is like, it just sort of drops into that mode. And I was able to go handle the situation with the girls, allow Bree to keep cleaning up, handle the baby. And it was just such a nice experience to just have that mental clarity and that just wherewithal and awareness to just then go handle the situations. I've done it other times in work when I just, I'm a little bit stressed or overwhelmed, of just locking into that and being able to drop into that without having to do some 10-minute long meditation or something like that or anything. I can just lock into that right away.
Yeah, it's a muscle you've built, a pathway you've built in your brain.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
Yeah. So cold plunging's definitely helped to learn how to lock that in really fast on really kind of a dime.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive. That's cool.
Number 2 for you.
Number 2 for me was surfing. And that's, I kind of surfed on and off for years, having come out here to visit. But really, when I moved back to Southern California, January of 2025, was when I was like, okay, this is my chance. Like really, like do this on a regular basis and get to a point where I no longer feel like imposter syndrome at like can say I'm a surfer. Yes, I surf regularly. I know how to do it. I can, get up on whatever wave I'm on. But man, did that teach me like patience and persistence. Because the thing about surfing is that you're dependent on the weather, of course, on the waves. And then you get to practice only when you are catching a wave actively. So it's almost like working on your golf swing, but like only if the wind is going the right way and you have a split second to try it right in this moment. So, because like the wave's going to come and it's either going to pass you or you're going to get up on it. And so like it definitely requires a lot of patience. And I tend to be more like a head first, ask questions later kind of person. And so for me to like slow down and be like, okay, like also learning like, waves come in sets of 3 to 5. So I would get out there and be like, that looks like a decent one. Like, let's take it. And, the more I worked, especially with Kate, my wife, helped me realize this a lot of like, just wait for the right one. Don't gas yourself out. Be patient, be calm, and like slowly practice it. So like patience within the session itself, but then patience with like the process of like, you just got to start on the biggest board and just wait till you like master that and get really good at that and small, easy waves before you even think about trying to take on a bigger wave, shorter board, and get more advanced. And it has taken a lot of patience and persistence, but it's really worth it. It's enjoyable now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you found any areas of your life where you've been able to transpose that patience and persistence into other parts of your life?
Not yet, if I'm being honest, because it's like still like kind of new to me. I would say in sales, that's just part of it, and I think it's been cool as we've had some more junior sales reps who I'm working alongside. I think I've been able to impart that with them almost more easily, that I'm experiencing this in surfing. I'd kind of at the point where I was when I was learning this lesson, sales wise, I was doing okay. So, but it's been cool to have another like way to think about it in the meantime.
Yeah. Catching those waves. It's very applicable.
Yes. Yeah. And like the first, like some days you just go out, it just sucks. This is terrible. You're just drinking salt water and getting tumbled around. But then the next time it's all worth it. So,
nice.
Yeah.
I'll ask you again about learning and transposing patience and persistence in your life after your son's born.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think you'll have a different answer.
It'll be that one.
Yeah. That's great. Surfing is one of those hobbies I would love to do at some point, but living a little bit further from the coast is just not in the bag. But it sounds I've never met somebody who says I hate surfing or I surfed for a little bit and it's I hate it or I no longer do it.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
it's true, and it definitely is like unfortunately kind of a high barrier to entry, not because of the cost or anything, but just because of the it just is not super fun for a while. Yeah.
It's one of those, I'm thinking about the marshmallow experiment where they get the kids the marshmallows and the delayed gratification. Yes, only those kids had to have like salt water shoved up their nose and in their mouth a couple times and tumbling through waves to get that marshmallow. Yeah,
exactly.
Cool. All right. Well, my third one is becoming a pilot. And that happened a couple years ago. So kind of early to mid 30s. And one of the things that was really interesting about becoming a pilot, it was one of the biggest hobbies I've done or biggest undertakings I've done since having is it the prefrontal cortex or the frontal lobe, whatever that thing that like basically says as a younger person that I'm invincible, there's no danger, having that fully developed. And so this is the first time growing up, we did a lot of really extreme things. Again, rock climbing, a lot of like crazy desert hiking and like out on trails that we never should have been out in that type of heat. We've always been risk takers in that way through adventurous hobbies. And I think that one of the things I recognized, I didn't realize at the time, was just how much the lack of fear played into that. It's easy to go do things when you're not scared of it, when you don't have the fear, and it's easy to feel invincible then. Taking on flying was the first time I did something where I had fear and I had to confront that fear. And I recognized during that how ill-equipped I was to take on fear because I never had to deal with it before my life. All the things that other people would say, I was fearful of like even small things like, the roller coaster at Six Flags or something. I'm scared of doing that. But I want to go on with all the friends. They had to learn how to work through that fear at 16 years old. I never had that fear. And so I never learned how to work through fear in that way. And then taking on flying, all of a sudden fear found me, and I had to learn how to cope and how to deal with that and how to work through it. And I'm so thankful now for that experience. And so some of the learnings about how to deal with fear was one, at the time when I was flying, as I remember when I was going to do my first solo. So one of the most scared I ever was when you just all of a sudden you're like, hey, like I'm going up, and once that plane lifts off, it's all on me to get us back down. Was I had been meditating a lot on Psalm 16, and in that passage it talks about as we bring our minds to the Lord, our flesh dwells securely. Basically, as we meditate upon Him and as we entrust ourselves to Him. And I thought that was such a good thing, that as I put faith and trust in God's promises in that verse, I saw them come true, that my flesh dwelt securely, that the anxiety, the fear dissipated as I focused upon the Lord. So that was really, really great and helpful. And the second piece of overcoming fear in a much more pragmatic sense was breaking it down into very bite-sized pieces. And so I'm not sure if I've ever told you this story, but so you and your wife, Kate, you guys were dating at the time. You were the first people I ever took up. Mm-hmm. I just got my pilot's license. Yep. The first people I ever took up solo with me, and I was losing it. Not losing it, but really scared, really nervous. I really wanted to take you guys up, had that experience, but I was nervous. This was going to be the first time I was ever had somebody else's hands in my life, and I was going to be flying again. I just, got my pilot's license, was a very safe pilot, but it was all on me. And the day that we went out, my stomach was just in knots and just so nervous for it. And I decided, okay, you know what? All I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the plane and I'm going to show you guys the plane. And we're just going to turn it on. And if I feel at that point, like I just can't handle it, because again, like the nerves were palpable, like kind of that feeling before maybe for some people public speaking, where you just like, I just got to get out of here.
Yeah,
I just
almost biological.
Yeah, it's just a physiological response, and I'm going through everything. And then I was like, okay, we're going to turn the plane on. And then it was like, okay, I'm okay. You know what? I'm just going to take it to the run up where we do all the system checks. And at that point, if I'm still not feeling good, I can just bail out. And then it was, okay, got that done. And then I was like, I'm just going to bring it up to the runway, and we're going to go to the whole short line there. And at that point, if I'm really not feeling it, I'll just tell the tower like, hey, I need a taxi down the runway and go back to parking, or I need to make a 180 here. And then we got up there and it's like, all right, I'm just going to request clearance to take off. I can always abort the takeoff and just roll down the runway back to the parking. And then it was like, all right, we're going. And then it was just pushing that throttle in and like, all right, and I'm just going to pull back. Like next step, I'm pulling back on the yoke, and okay, we're flying. And okay. And then it was the confidence. I've landed this thing 100 times by now. I can certainly at least put us into the pattern and just come back and land. And then it was like, okay, now we had to make a left turn out of our left crosswind departure to go on our little coastal flight. And so it was like, okay, I'm just going to instead of turning right to be in the pattern at our airport, I was going to I'm just going to turn left. And then it was just one step after the next. And so it was a great lesson to just break fear down into some of those component pieces and just focus on that next thing and just trust yourself and trust the process there. So that was a really good lesson. And then I've been able to apply in a couple other areas, mostly with just flying, but just breaking things down into smaller pieces.
That's a really cool approach, because each piece is so manageable, especially if you have sort of a bailout, if you will, to each part of it. Mm-hmm. That's really cool. I like that a lot. It's a good framework to take towards anything that you're like intimidated about or a little bit fearful of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, number 3 for you?
Yeah, number 3 for me was rock climbing. Rock climbing was a big part of my life. And at the time that I was getting really into rock climbing, I was also working as a rope access technician. So as somebody, we would wash windows on high-rise buildings or do maintenance on things that were really high up. So we're all tied in with, kind of industrial strength rock climbing equipment. And so it was a really fun time in my life. And I was climbing a lot. My favorite thing was to take new people out climbing. That's actually how I met Kate, was taking a bunch of new people out climbing. And a climbing highlight for me was when I was in Southeast Asia. I found a climbing outfit there in Malaysia, and we went to this area called Batu Caves. It's huge, overhung limestone cliffs. And so it's sport climbing, you're overhung. And so you're clipping in up here and then like scaling that. Awesome, holds and everything, really incredible rock. And it was just such a crazy exotic experience because as you know, I'm like partway up this rock towards the top, you know, I'm working on my breathing, being calm. And at the time too, you know, you're in still central Malaysia, the call to prayer goes off, and it's this like citywide call towards taking a break from what you're doing and praying. That's obviously for, you know, as an Islamic tradition, but I found that that was a really cool time of day to also stop and reflect. And so I remember being up there climbing and thinking about this and just being like so calm on the rock. And I had the thought that I was like, man, this is really cool, but really the joy of this hobby has been sharing it with other people and introducing other people to it. And that became really like my framework for not just climbing, but it's also my framework now for business of like, it's cool to get yourself to the top of a mountain or to get yourself somewhere in your career, but it's 10 times cooler to get somebody else there. And so a lot of my climbing and then later on approach to business has been this really transition from like, okay, it's one thing that if I can get myself somewhere, but it's so much more fulfilling helping people get to somewhere else. And that's been a really amazing impact of that hobby in my life.
That's really neat. I love that expression that it's not so much as fun to get there yourself, but to bring people along with you.
Yeah.
Even if you maybe don't go as far, right? You could probably have done a lot more rock climbing or a lot of other things and gone further in that, had a lot cooler climbs.
Exactly.
But when you bring that along, and I think that shows, again, it's a self-sacrificial nature. It's also a community nature. And it's also a great thing when you just are invested in other people in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just so much more rich, you know, like, for sure, like I've got great memories getting to the top of a climb, but I've got even greater memories like in the car on the way there or getting, I mean, my favorite thing about getting new people out climbing is like, they just don't have that, they haven't done it, right? So they don't have that, like, they're going to hit that wall eventually of like, oh, I'm halfway up this. I didn't think it was going to be this high, or I didn't think it would look like that when I looked down, or I didn't think I would, my legs would give out like they do. And coaching people through that first time is so fascinating to me because you get to be with them in a really like vulnerable place. But when they get past that and they get back down, it's like, dude, watch out, because that person can do anything in that moment.
So what I like that. Who are some of the people, just first name basis, that have brought you along into their hobbies where you've been the benefactor?
That's cool. Yeah.
That?
Yeah. And I think that was the concept that I think took that even further of like, I benefited from people doing this. So now I can never pay those people back, but I can always pay it forward and be that person for other people. So thinking about climbing, the first person that ever taken me climbing was my buddy Jesse and Jonathan. They were brothers. Thinking about diving, I did the bulk of my diving in Southeast Asia, but the person who kind of brought me alongside him and in it was my buddy Nate. We learned at the same time together. And then of course, Brandon, who we dove with a couple times here in Southern California. A lot of people who I would can thank for bringing me along, things like that. Anybody for you who comes to mind?
Yeah, so cold plunging, my buddy Brian, and we talked about him in one of the earlier podcasts. And so he brought me along with that as we started talking about just cold showers, and he got his, I benefited a lot because he got his cold plunge and did this sort of Mickey Mouse situation, and I could take all his learnings and basically do mine. And then, so cold plunging, definitely him. And then for flying, my buddy Brandon, who got me into flying and helped me get into a really good school where I was very safe and was able to learn how to be a very safe pilot, and who was just somebody I could talk to about flying all the time and just ask him all the questions, and he could take me up and we could practice some skills together and things like that. And then scuba diving, I got into that really kind of on my own. There wasn't really anybody. I was just sort of on my own in my class and everything. And then later found out, as I became friends with Brandon, that he dove as well. And so then him and you really became my dive buddies. And so I would say I did get to learn from both of you different aspects to the diving. I think from him, I learned about a lot of the gear up and just the enjoyment of going out and doing the gear up. And then from you, learning a lot of that, just calmness. I remember going scuba diving and you'd always have significantly more air in your tank at the end of it, and probably just because you're in better shape than I am. But I'd be motioning you guys like I'm low on air, and you guys are like at half tank still.
Yeah.
So, anyway, learning that and just the controlled breathing. So
Very cool.
great,
Man, what a great topic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a great one. Yeah, thanks for suggesting it.
Yeah.
All right, well, we hope you guys enjoyed this. Let us know any comments or any hobbies that you have down in the comments or things that you've learned from your hobbies. We love to learn from you and hear from you. But other than that, hope you enjoyed this episode of the Lucas Bros podcast. We'll see you next time.